All right, Larry. Thank you for sending me your swing videos. It's apparent to me why you're such a great player. You do a lot of things really well in your swing. I really like your swing a lot, and so when you deal with a swing at this high level, it's very difficult to improve. But I think I see some things from a sequencing standpoint that will definitely help you out a little bit here. I remember from your email you stating that you hit the ball a little too high with your short irons, and I think this video is going to shed some light on exactly why that happens. But if we take a look at your golf swing here, basically the issue that I see is your ability to rotate and get open in the downswing, and because you can't quite open up the body the way that you need to, getting the pelvis rotated back open and the shoulders back open and the hand path moving a little bit more out, you lose control of the handle just a little bit through impact, and you can see it gets just a little bit flippy there. There's a little faster overtaking rate of the club head relative to the grip, and that's kind of what you mentioned in your email as well. And I just want to shed some light on why I think that is occurring, why you can't quite get open and turn the corner and control that handle like, say, the player over here on the right. So you can see the geometry in the swings is just a little bit different. So if we look at sort of this last parallel to the ground, couple things I want to call to your attention, but obviously the obvious are how much more the lower body is rotated, how much more, if I drew a straight line down from the lead shoulder, how the hands are more on this side of that line. That just means that the hand path has made a wider circle on the downswing. And in your case, that your hands are basically right underneath your left shoulder, and your club head is well back in behind your hands. And so that's going to be adding a considerable amount of dynamic loft to the club, and that's why you're hitting those short irons so high. So the focus of this lesson is going to be, okay, how do we create a little bit more rotation of your body in the downstroke? And what that starts with is an understanding that you basically rotate your body too much in the backswing. And I don't say that very often to players. In fact, most of the time it's the other way around. It's, how do I get this guy to turn in his backswing? But you're obviously a good player and a good athlete, so you turn too much. You have too much rotation. And I know you just said you were measured in 3D recently, and the 3D would reveal that. If we're talking just baseline numbers here, and let's say that everything is relative to your stance line, so I'll put that line down there. We want the pelvis to rotate about 45 degrees in the backswing. Okay, so there. This is not an exact science here, but say something along those lines there. Let me do that again. From the center. All right, there we go. So if I put a stick through your belt loops, at address, sticking out on both sides, I would want you to turn your pelvis and that stick to about 45-degree angle, and that's about it. So we want the pelvis to turn about 45 degrees, and we want the shoulders to turn 45 degrees relative to the pelvis. So that gets you about a 90-degree shoulder turn at the top. And in your case, you turn everything all at once at the start of your backswing. So your pelvis, as the club goes into motion, your hips, your pelvis, your shoulders, everything starts to turn. And let me go back to the down the line view because it shows that just a little bit better. So I'll zoom it in so you can see. So watch, as soon you can see your left knee, as the club head's moved 1 inch, your pelvis is already rotating. And in my players, I don't like to see the hips turn at all until the club is at the first parallel. So you've almost completed a full hip turn in your backswing by the time you get to the first parallel. And that's problematic because you're just going to keep turning and keep rotating all the way to the top, to the point to where your swing is so long and there's so much rotation of your body that you simply can't, at this age, you just simply can't open up fast enough to get that lead arm more out and those hips open enough to where when we get to this left arm parallel to the ground position, I shouldn't see any of your left knee in this view. It should be covered up by the right knee. But because you've turned your hips so much in the backswing, you simply can't get open and you can't get back on top. And there's another reason why that you can't turn from there as well, and I'm going to show you that from the face on. So I'm going to kind of zoom this in just a little bit. If I draw a straight line up from the middle of your ankle, just 90 degrees, and this is just a basic reference point, and I'm going to do the same thing to the player over here on the right. I'm going to zoom this in. Again, from the middle of the foot, straight line up, right there. So you guys are setting up slightly different. He might have his hips bumped a little bit more forward. There's a little bit more space between that line and his right hip. But that's the point of the illustration, is I want to create a visual frame of reference for when you transition. I want you to watch how your hip starts to move away from this line very, very fast in transition. So that linear lateral translation, that slide, keeps you from creating rotation, enough rotation in your body to get open. And if you watch the player over here on the right, you can see whatever space he's established from that red line at the top is going to pretty much stay the same when he transitions. And so look at how much more open he is. Look at how much more the left knee's in this direction and how much more the shoulders are in this direction. So everything's staying very, very close. So in recapping this, number one, we turn everything too far in the backswing. You just simply don't have enough strength and coordination to take that much body rotation in the backswing and be dynamic enough to get it back open enough in the downstroke. You stay closed, your hips slide forward away from this, and then from there, the only thing you can do is kind of stand up at the last minute, straighten your legs, and that's where we see the fast kind of overtaking rate of the grip. And that's simply because of the push off the right side here. You're just pushing off that right leg instead of turning. And so I would start in the backswing by limiting the amount that your hips are rotating early. Again, I don't like to see the pelvis moving very much from address to club parallel to the ground in that first part of the backswing. So if we can change that sequencing just a little bit, it's going to wind up everything just a little bit tighter, the relationship of the lower body and the upper body, and the backswing won't quite be so long with an iron. So I'm assuming this is a 6 or 7 iron, and I don't see very many players with a 7 iron or 6 iron at parallel in the backswing. I would expect this to look more like a driver swing. So again, your shoulder turn is probably complete in this ballpark somewhere, right in there. and then we'll be able to manage those, both lateral and rotational aspects of your downswing in a little bit more sequence fashion. So let's talk about some drills for a second. This is a really good one for you right here. So this is the first one I want you to do. So I've got this stick on the ground, in the ground back here, on about a 40-degree angle relative to the golf ball. You can put it on a 45 if you want, but it's back behind the golfer, and it's basically forcing him. He's got an alignment rod through his belt loops. It's basically forcing him to get his pelvis 45 degrees open, and our goal is to do that before impact. Now, the key thing here for you is understanding the tilts of the pelvis. So in the backswing, the right hip should be working up and back, and the left hip should be working down. And that's very well indicated by the alignment rod sticking through your belt loops here. That thing looks like this. So the right hip is up and the left hip is down. And the problem is, in transition, you drop your right hip really fast because your pelvis slides forward this way. And so you lose that downward inclination to your pelvis. And so part of this drill is, I took a Sharpie and I put a mark on the alignment rod behind him. And my goal was to get him to hit that alignment rod way down here with his alignment rod. And to do that, he had to feel like he was keeping the left side of his pelvis very low as he rotated back to the target. And so this is what that looks like. Let me get everything off of there. Now you can see that the left side of the pelvis doesn't stay as low as it probably feels. He's barely making contact with the alignment rod back there toward the higher portion, but he's, in his mind, in transition, he's trying to hit it way down here somewhere. But because of the nature of a ground reaction force, to where when we start creating speed and you start to push up out of the ground here, it's going to lift the left side of your pelvis. But again, his intent is, in transition, to keep the left side of his pelvis down and turn. And you can see just how wildly open that allows the golfer to get. I mean, his hips are probably 60 degrees open at impact right there. And view that from down the line. It's going to look very similar. Again, there's a change in flexing the knees. I'm going to back up real quick. Left side of the pelvis stays down. He's trying to turn and rotate and hit the stick on the lowest part of the stick that he can. But you can see how open the body's getting here. Pelvis is just cranking open. And again, this is a drill. I don't want to go crazy with it. You can overdo all of this, but you can see how just controlled the handle is moving around the corner because of the body rotation there. So that's the drill I've prescribed for you. And like I said, you don't need much. You've got a pretty darn high level golf swing. The sequencing needs to change just a little bit. Back to the down the line view for you. You need to feel like you can put the club into motion without moving. If I held an alignment rod across your knees here, I would want you to maintain 2 points of contact across that and get all the way to this first parallel. So we'd be turning your lower body off significantly at the start. And then once you get to this position, everything would turn together. You would start turning the pelvis, you would start turning the thorax, and that's going to shorten your backswing a lot without you thinking about shortening your backswing up here. And as soon as we can get that backswing shortened just a little bit, I'd like to see you probably more in this spot right here. And then your physical cue is keep the lead side of my pelvis down as I rotate back to the target. And I think you'll be on your way. So hope this video helps you. Shoot me an email if you have any questions.